Welcome back to the workbench. Today is the day I'm going to work on disassembling and rebuilding the Franklin steam locomotive. This one is going to be interesting. I can tell right off the bat for a couple reasons. One, as you can probably see on the top of the cab, there's a huge chunk out of the corner, unfortunately. Otherwise, this locomotive would have been in pretty much perfect shape, and that piece is not in the box. Right away I can see that this will be a little different to take apart because the cab has a Phillips screw on the top instead of a straight. So here we go. And I'm not really sure what that holds on. Everything else appears to be screwed in with the regular old flat blade screws. I have to be very careful putting that back together because that's plastic and it could crack. I have nut drivers, every size except that one. Okay, now it looks like we have to pull the smoke tube out of the smokestack. These are different because they're very long. Oh, there we have it. The shell comes off just like that. So I'm going to give the shell a bath over at the sink a little bit later. Here we have our motor and choo-choo. This choo-choo mechanism is quite a bit smaller than the standard ones. To pack it into this tiny little boiler shell, we'll get at the tender so we can get the reverser serviced as well. And just like that, the tender shell comes off. One screw holding that on. Right away I see part of the problem why this doesn't work. This wire is completely broken off, so that, if that is the only thing wrong with this, might be an easy fix. And we'll give everything a good cleaning and put it back together. This locomotive wasn't nearly as dirty as I had expected it, seeing the layer of dust that was on the shell. I did not give the locomotive a bath as I had originally anticipated because of the paper labels on the tender cab and on the tender and the cab. Instead, I wiped off the dust with a damp paper towel to assure that I would not damage the paper decals on the sides. And the motor chassis and the tender were the same. I just wiped them down with a damp paper towel. Now I am going to attempt to repair this broken wire and see if this locomotive will come to life. It should be relatively straightforward to strip back this wire. Well, it looks like both of them actually broke off on the wires going to the trucks. I'm assuming these are original wires, but they don't feel as flexible as the ones in this wire loom. These look like they're already tinned or they're solid core wire, which is a good way for it to break off. Okay, got the tender wire soldered back in place. I want to hook up my power supply and see if this will do anything. Looks like we have a successful repair. So the next thing I'll do is I pulled the motor apart on this locomotive. I was initially hoping to not have to do that, but I think to help squelch the squealing noise, I had to pull it apart, give it just a bit more of a scrubbing and cleaning. I have a feeling that some of that sawdust from the box got inside the motor and was binding up a little bit. So what I'll do is get some of my cleaner and clean off the commutator, and then wipe down all the other surfaces, make sure they're clean and free of dust and dirt, and then put it back together and see if it goes. These later American Flyer chassis are kind of interesting because they actually are two pieces instead of one, so it's very easy to remove the wheels and axles, which is nice because then I can get those cleaned and lubricated as well. There wasn't much of anything in there at all, so I'm just going to give it a little bit of oil, and then we'll put the bottom cover back on, and we should be ready to reassemble the motor. And I'm going to go ahead and give it some grease ahead of time on this bottom drive gear. That'll get itself worked in later when it's running. These thrust washers have dirt on them, so I'm going to grab a fresh Q-tip and wipe those off as well. That might have been part of the reason why it was squealing, is because there's dirt on these. Alright, the locomotive motor has been reassembled. I'm going to fire it up and see if it goes without squealing this time. It's not happy, that's for sure. Let's add some more oil. Well, I think this has been a successful repair. The last thing I'm going to do is clean off and polish the pickup wheels on the tender, but I'm going to do that off camera because that's really boring. And then I will reassemble it, we'll take it over to the tracks and see if it runs. Okay, time to put this locomotive back together. I'll start with the tender because that is the easiest. All you have to do is stick the shell on, line up the slot in the front with the tab, and then install the one screw in the back. Okay, we're back in action. I'm just gonna put this back together. When you put metal screws into a plastic shell, you really want to be careful you don't over tighten it, otherwise it can crack the plastic that it's screwed into. Alright, This locomotive restoration is complete, at least as far as I'm going to be taking it. Now, let's take it over to the track and see if it runs. Well, it looks like this restoration was a success. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe as it helps my channel.